Oh,
Nice.
nice to see you.
So great to
Same
see
here.
you.
So are the fires affecting you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit. I've never had ash raining down on me
Wow.
before. It doesn't happen in
Yeah.
Rockland County. And it's freaky because it's not like a light rain, but it's like, what was that I just saw? Wait, what was that over there?
Yeah.
So it's like having floaters in your eyes, and then you look at the car, and like every 4 or 5 inches, there'll be a little piece of
Yeah.
white ex pine tree, which is sad, or a burned up bunny. I don't know, man. The whole thing is just god
Well,
awful.
we have fires here too. So that's from a big fire that's been going on for over a week in Colorado. So
How far away is that from you, where you live?
about,
70 miles, maybe.
yeah, 70 miles as a crow flies.
It's not that far.
No. So
Wow.
it was really, we had the one day where it was like apocalyptic with the dark skies and the bright red orb in the sky. It was really
I know
bizarre.
someone that lives in San Francisco, and my cousins live there. And he put up the heat index. I couldn't believe what it was compared to what it is here in New York.
Yes.
It's
It's
unbelievable.
The
Yeah.
producer Val Garay is working on a record with, and he posted something, and he said this looks like something we would see that was John Cage or something from The Land, back in the 60s. Traffic cones melting.
Wow.
They
Wow.
were melted on the asphalt.
Mhm.
Remember how that used to be? People would take a piece of art and then glob it out,
I went to Hawaii once, the Big Island, and
Oh, yeah.
you could go out to where the new islands were forming, and it was still hot. You know,
Yes.
kind of an iffy place to go. But the traffic signs just like melted, like it was butter. It's unbelievable.
That's what this was like.
Yeah.
I thought it was a joke, but
It's crazy. I have to say that I've really been missing singing regularly, but this was one time where I was like, oh, I don't have a gig and I don't know if I could sing because you're breathing that stuff. It's like smoking a pack of cigarettes.
Wow. Do you know Mark Davenport?
I do, sure.
He lives, I don't know if he lives far from you, but I saw some of his posts about it. And I guess, did it snow where you guys are and kind of quell the fires for a bit?
It helped.
Well, I don't know about where those fires are, but we're looking at snow right now outside.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's very unusual for the
So
beginning of
unusual.
September.
There's so many things that are unusual this year. It's like
20,
just chalk it up to
Yeah, it's like one of those 2020
Yeah.
you couldn't even make up. But if you knew in advance, you'd just skip a year. I'll trade that year in, Dr.
How has COVID affected you guys?
Well, for me, we're almost without shows. We've had one here and one there. They're usually, when we do have a show, it's really just to play. It's really not something where, we're making enough money to do it regularly. So, but it's been a creative time. We've been writing songs. We've been in the studio again now that we kind of feel comfortable being around each other. I think, the first 3 months it was just kind of like, forget it. Yeah. So now there is some order in the universe. It feels like we've some space to write songs. I feel like I meditate like more than I've ever meditated in my life. So internally, I feel really, really good.
Now, you have a young daughter. Is she home doing online classes?
Yes, and that's been a huge change. I mean, luckily she's 14, so homeschooling a second grader would be totally different, but she's pretty independent at this point, although, she has one close friend who lives close to us, so we just put them in a room together a lot.
That's great.
Yeah, it just, even though they go to different schools now because they're in a different high school, it just helps to have them in the same room.
Absolutely.
But for them, I think this is going to be like the Great Depression was for kids in that era. It'll change them in some way.
Jeff, how is the social scene and the music business scene where you are outside of Boulder? How is it different than New York?
You know,
Not COVID related, like pre-COVID at least. And
seriously greatest questions ever.
That is a good question.
I read it and I said, "Oh, okay. Let me think about that." And I've been thinking about it for 24 hours, and I still don't have a really lucid answer. And I think what it's based on is time more than anything. So when I was growing up in Rockland, Danny Tone and David Snyder could play on the same gig if Danny wasn't well or he had something else to do. Abe Spiller could play, and Alex could. It was kind of a real community.
Mm-hmm.
Member. And when I moved to Goshen in the late '70s and through the '80s, I was doing a lot of metal bands. And
Yeah, metal.
there you go. And there was a lot of confrontation going on between bands. I mean, it was kind of like each band was in their own mosh pit, if you will. And I go, "Oh, I just recorded these guys. They're so cool." Yeah, we hate those guys. And it was
Yeah.
they called Ben Circus were more egalitarian. They liked everybody, and they were wonderful that way. But the harder the metal got, the more antithetical things got, and loggerheads and all these words started in my vocabulary, and so that kind of went away. And then during the Bill Perry era, when we had like Slam Allen playing and some of the other great blues players, Fred Scribner and all these guys, I mean, Rich Maraday, there was constant great music and camaraderie going on. I mean, it was like, it was just a love fest, and that was kind of cool.
Do you think we're talking a time period of 20 years ago and the things you're talking about right now?
Mhm.
So what do you think it's like for the people 20 years ago in Colorado compared to the scene in New York? Do you think there's as much going on, less intensity maybe?
Right, too. Let me just finish my thought. So when I moved out here, all of a sudden I'm recording mandolins and banjos.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of bluegrass in Middletown, New York. I mean, there's
Right.
a lot of Marshall stacks and dive bombing 7-string guitars.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a bit of a tuning up that I had to do. Not that I don't like those things. It's just that, okay, so this room is not really designed. I was thinking more like a metal thing, and so there isn't a whole lot of isolation. We didn't incorporate that. And one of the great groups that I worked with they'd worked in a studio in Nashville, and everybody had their own room because they do blue time and that kind of thing. And so it wasn't long before I started, finding more and more rock bands. But finally, it's because I was the new kid on the block, and now I'm finally finding a family of musicians that we can call on. Obviously, Cass and Taylor have a circle of friends that are absolutely like New York City A-player people that you can count on. David Snyder's got his guys. There are a lot of guys from Paonia, Colorado, and Denver guys that are killers too. That we can, and so that's the family, and it's a circle of friends, but it takes years to develop that for a studio. It's a handshake thing. Because you're taking money from musicians, ergo you might be a bad guy. And when you realize that it's like to pay the electric bill so that we can maintain this and keep this thing going, that's a different story. Now, to your question, quickly, Boulder in the 70s was where the Eagles came to get their chops up, and Tulagis, and Stephen Stills was living here, and Richie Furay was here, and all these monster people were here. So this was a real hotbed. And I think things kind of migrated toward LA in the 80s, and then there was a vacuum here that I don't know that it's killed. And then Cass. No, but it's another story.
How did you guys meet? How did the two of you meet?
Oh, wow. So I did a show at a local place that is in our neighborhood, because my house is just about 5 minutes away from here, from the studio. So he came to the show. It was at a place called Nisi's that actually just closed during COVID. which so many great venues have, and they had live music almost every night of the week. So we were playing there, and after the show, actually on a break, I talked to you a little bit.
Yeah.
And then after the show, he and I got into a conversation, and he's like, well, you've got to come look at the studio. And I was thinking, you know, I don't have really any project in mind right now. I hadn't written an album yet. I could feel that was on the horizon, but it wasn't like something that was pressing on me yet. But
maybe
like
7 years ago or so.
5.
No, I've only been doing this for
October?
6 years. So
It was 5.
Yeah, it
It'll be
was
5 in October.
5. Yeah. Was it really 5? That's amazing. So
I think so.
So I did come and look at the studio, and I always am fascinated with the way that works. Like once you even conceive it, it's as good as done.
Right.
It's just the time hasn't happened yet, and that's really how it rolled out.
And the studio is so beautiful and so
Yeah.
attractive. How could you not want to go there and spend more time there? And
Right.
Well, we
yeah,
have a friend that owns a
Yes.
drum store here in Boulder.
Yeah.
And
Billy Hook.
yeah, Billy said, "Oh, you know, you got to meet Jeff, and you got to go to the studio, and you got to do all this." And you know, he's got a new Corvette, a new Harley, and all this stuff. And Cass and I are thinking guitars. I have guitars. You like guitars. I like guitars.
Let's talk about guitars.
Let's go to
Yeah.
a place where there are guitars, you know. And so we hit it off like we'd known each other
Forever. Yeah.
in another
pretty much.
lifetime
Yeah.
or multiple lifetimes.
Yeah.
And it was really fluid. Cass uses the word comfortable, I think.
It was.
Our
It was just
conversation.
instantly comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
like, oh
yeah.
yeah, I know you somehow. Yeah. It just felt really easy, and we.
so how did you get Taylor involved in the association? How did that happen?
Yeah. So
We
the
both have
first.
stories.
Yeah, we both have a love of Taylor. So the way I met Taylor was, so we had done first, I did an EP with Jeff in the studio with a different producer. And it was a really good starting project, but I really had this sound and feel that I had in mind that we weren't really getting that yet. And I knew it was out there. I just couldn't, it wasn't that way. And it was the first EP I'd ever done, the first songs I'd written. So, you know, even though it didn't get there, I was happy with the way that project turned out because I learned a lot. So Taylor, the lead guitar player in my band, got in a motorcycle accident and dislocated his thumb.
Oh.
Yeah. So he couldn't play, and Taylor started just jumping in and playing with us at various gigs whenever his band was in town and they didn't have something scheduled, which was such a huge deal because he learned all of our music. Just, you know, he can learn anything in
With that.
he's a quick study. So, and it was just really nice. I mean, he was just a really easy guy to be around, and his friends would come out when he played and we'd all drink afterwards. That's when I was still drinking, and we had a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
I remember driving Cass's car home a few nights. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. He actually drove me home a number of nights so that I
that's
wouldn't
what
have to
mean,
drive.
yeah.
But you know, one day Taylor just said, "Hey, do you want to write some songs together?" And I said yes, but I immediately kind of went into terror because I hadn't done any writing on that level, and I loved his music, and it was really intimidating to me. So I didn't ever contact him about it. And then a few months later, he's like, "Yeah, we talked about doing that. Why don't you show me what you've got?" And so I showed him some lyrics from a couple songs. I mean, I'd written, you know, a ton of stuff. I was just taking the very best of what I thought we could get, you know, together on. And he put it together in a way that I couldn't hear. And I knew right away that he had some magic in the way he could translate the way something felt. It was like it could come from feeling, and he
Very
could.
deep place. Yeah.
Yeah. So we took those 2 songs into the studio.
Mhm.
And I thought we were doing 2 songs and that was it, but it went so beautifully. It was just
Isn't
such
it funny when you, and I've had the same thing, when you have an opportunity to play with people who are at a higher level than you are,
Yes.
you can either choose to rise to the occasion and do whatever you need to do to be there with them or not, you know?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, every time I play with any of these guys that Taylor hangs out with, I make sure I do everything I can to have my ears open, to be completely prepared, tuned in on it. I mean, you're just tuned in and alert and every cell in your body is excited on a different level, right?
Yeah.
It's
That's what they call being an artist.
yeah.
Love it.
Yes, I agree. That's why we do it. It's the best natural high in the world.
Absolutely.
Alex, you have some questions, don't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, well,
I wanna-
Jeff,
if you-
how long have you
There
had that
we go.
studio?
Well, the studio started in Orange County, was incorporated in 1977. So I'm sort of like getting close to breaking a record for longevity in a recording studio.
That's something,
Yeah.
especially these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you had your studio in Orange County, I'm sorry, Alex, this will be fast.
It's okay.
That was right after your association with Les Paul.
It was concurrent, and that's kind of why I did what I did, because I was lying in bed one day thinking about my day job and how I hated that. And I was collecting guitars. I was studying guitar.
What was your day job?
I worked for International Paper in Sterling Forest, so it was like a country club setting. And I was actually using my degree from college because it's in fine arts and they needed someone to sculpt and do mold making. And it was pretty fascinating. And it turned out that my boss was the best model maker ever. I mean, I still have pictures of things that this guy built that you can't even believe. I mean, he would go to a jeweler and say, "Do you have a screw this size?" And they go, "No," and it's too big. He'd go home and make screws on a screw machine that were smaller than what a jeweler would use in a watch. Seriously.
Wow.
So that was a pretty cool gig. You know, it was pretty enjoyable. And that closed down, and they offered me a job in an audiovisual capacity. So I'm thinking, here's a tape recorder, a whole bunch of 57s, a couple of mic preamps, and I can take this home in a suitcase on a Friday night and bring it back on a Monday. So that's what Goshen started out as. It was a ping pong table with a TAC 4-track on it.
TX 2488. What was it? 44. Yeah, I remember that machine.
I have an A2340 right next to me here.
Great machine.
Uh-huh.
So cool.
Great machine. So, you know, I had to graduate to something professional. And Les Paul sat me down one day and I said, you know, the Tascam is making an 8-track tape recorder. And he said, yeah, it's made from recycled bud cans. What you need in he said, do you have air conditioning? I said, no, not yet. I can't afford an air conditioner. He goes, what kind of heat do you have? I said, a wood stove. He goes, that thing is going to be out of alignment all the time. You'll never be able to play back the same stuff you did 5 days ago. You need something, and he pointed out the window at his Lincoln town car. He said, that's built on a frame. You need an Ampex tape machine. So it's a really cool story that we could go into another time, but I ended up with the Ampex tape machine that recorded Society's Child. And it came
From 914.
Well, I didn't know the connection with Brooks until way later. And I just talked to Janisine about that about a month ago. And I said, I have the machine. And she goes, she's succinct. She said provenance with a question mark. The whole story, because the guy that loaded it into the van worked at Mirror Sound where that was recorded. And Les bought all these machines back after they torched the place and got insurance money, and there was no damage done to them really. So so that's what I started with, was that 4-track because of Les Paul. He said, look, you know, so my whole life I've been like a billiard ball, you know, or like, you know, you have the flippers and God's got them and I'm just going this place. and you know, I've always just said it's like the thing where, you know, we could just jump off a bridge because we're fine. It's in God's hands. And that's always the way it's been. So, you know, all of a sudden I'm hanging out with Larry Alexander at 914 and I'm hanging out with Les Paul and I have a 4-track tape machine that has, it has a legacy. And I'm like, this might actually happen. Maybe something's going to go on here. So we started out charging $9 an hour.
Wow.
And that was big money, man.
Yeah.
Paid for the tape machine in 100 years then.
That's more money than I'm making right now.
So Cass,
Yeah.
so Cass, I mean, who are your vocal influences? Who did you like? Who'd you listen to, and who inspires you the most as far as vocals?
Yeah, vocally. Well, my dad was really, really into the blues. So I grew up listening to blues and jazz, but especially blues. And I was always drawn to the voices that were like gritty and raspy or clear, but had, I'd say the thing that they all had in common was just the ability to be effortless with the emotion that they could portray just by letting go. So, everybody from Mahalia Jackson to Coco Taylor,
Oh, yeah.
for his vocal style that was just so easy. Hubert Sumlin I've been listening to again, and Hubert Sumlin just, I don't know why I always end up crying when I hear him, but it's that quality that is just so easy, but it's not just singing. I mean, those people were really becoming the song. Aretha
Right.
didn't do that, and I love Aretha Franklin's voice, but hers was almost like, it was just, her voice had this, amazing hugeness to it. And I love Aretha, but that's not always what I was going for in terms of what I wanted to learn. Everybody wants that voice, but what's most important to me is like, am I in the song me by the song, and am I relaxed enough for my voice to just tell that story with total honesty?
Oh, there you go.
You know Venice Thomas?
No.
Her father was Rufus Thomas.
Oh,
sure.
heck yeah.
And her sister is Carla Thomas.
Okay.
And Denise lives in Westchester. And for the past few years, I played every Christmas at a fundraiser for the vets. It was at the Paramount Theater in Peekskill. It was organized by this guy, Bill Edwards. And all these Westchester musicians would pretty much play a concert for the vets. And over the years, Bill got all kinds of funding. They're not going to do it this year because of COVID, but a couple of years ago, Venice Thomas was on the bill. And I'm going to get upset. She sings the Star Spangled Banner with all these Vietnam vets for 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And Pete Levin, Tony Levin's brother, plays keyboard. So that one year she did that, she got on a plane right after the gig and flew to Washington, D.C. and performed with Aretha when Aretha did Natural Woman with the coat.
No way! Oh my God, I've watched that exact performance. Like,
she's one of the singers in the background. Her voice is just so powerful. So powerful.
Wow, what a story.
Did David
yeah.
story of working with Solomon Burke?
Yeah.
I don't need no microphone. They're trying to set up this. I don't need no microphone. Gig. And Kid Rock was singing louder than, all these guys were mic'd up. I don't need no microphone. It just tore it to shreds. Some power.
Yeah, absolutely. Cass, tell us about your first CD. I know we've spoken about this before on some of the interviews we did on the radio show, but could you kind of go over how that whole thing came about? Now, this was Cass Clayton Band CD.
Yes, and we didn't have a band yet. So, I was still playing covers with my previous band, and it was, after Taylor and I wrote those first 2 songs together and produced them, he was like, well, do you want to do more? And I'm like, yes, let's do more. And he said, well, what do you want to do? You want to do an EP, a full-length CD? And I really didn't know. I just didn't know. I didn't know if I had another. Every time I write a song, I always think that's the last one I'll ever have in me. So I never really, I do trust it, but it also feels, strangely like that could be all I have left. So, so we started writing songs 2 by 2. Like we'd write 2 songs, bring them in the studio, write 2 songs, bring them in the studio. And it just seemed like, it was just so fortunate that for a first full-length CD, the lyrics were coming. I mean, I would rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite until I really got in the song what my heart wanted to say. And then Taylor was amazing at, we call it lopping off the baby's head. Like, you're not going to lop off your own baby's head, but if he thought like a verse just was extraneous, wasn't necessary, he would lop the baby's head off. And I couldn't always do that, and still can't. I can't always see the forest of the trees. Like, I'll think everything is important. And so he's always been really not just an amazing composer and producer, but he can make the song more succinct. I'm getting now to where I know, but it's so important to have somebody who's more subjective than you are in telling something that's an emotional story. But every one of those songs on that first album were like just waiting to come out, but I never knew what they were until I'd sit down. And we got to the end of the album and I was like, wow, that just went incredibly beautifully well. And everything about that first album, when I go back to it, it could have been our second album. It really, you can't tell that it's a first album, which is what makes me so happy. Really
now, when you write, do you come up with the lyrics first, or do you write it with the guitar, or do you come up with the guitar part, or how does that process work?
Most of the time, I write the lyrics and have a melody in my head, and then I take it to Taylor, and he's got the guitar, and he's like, well, is this funky, or like, what's the feel of the song? Sometimes you can tell just by the way I sing, or by the way sometimes I'll sing the bass line to him. Occasionally, we'll start with that, but usually I just sing the melody, and we start finding it together, and he'll say, well, what about this? And that's too obvious, and we just start working it out, and usually within a day's session together, we have the song, and then we're just refining it. Maybe the bridge isn't done. Maybe I need to add another verse. I used to write the entire song and take it to him, but now I generally write 3 verses and a chorus, and I don't write the bridge, because what I've discovered is that, at least in the way we write, the bridge that ties it all together, it could be an instrumental bridge. Maybe the story's told already when we start listening to it together as he plays through the instrumental part and composes it. Or maybe we really need a bridge, and it's always going to have to be something that's very organic the way it comes about. So I wait until we know, and then I write it, because I used to spend a lot of time and then we'd scrap the bridge or change the bridge. That's kind of the process. And then sometimes on occasion, Taylor has just said, hey, I've got this riff. Do you like it? And can you do anything with it? And I've written a few songs completely off of a riff that he's given to me.
Does he ever write lyrics with you?
Yes, now he does. He used to not. The first album, he made some changes to lyric, like he would tweak a few words or a line. But now, lately, because I think it's more about trust. I don't think I could have gone back and forth with something so intimate with somebody I didn't know that well. But we've written enough together now that we do write together sometimes. Like, I might take a couple verses and he'll write the third one with me, or but we don't just usually, in fact, we never have just sat down and beginning to end written lyrics right there. I usually have something to take to him that is the idea, a couple verses. But yes, he's definitely really truly co-writing now. Whereas before he was doing all the composing, I was doing most of the lyric writing.
Now, when you were growing up, you play guitar? Did you play the guitar to accompany yourself when you perform at coffee houses and stuff?
No, I never played guitar until a few years ago, like 3 years. Yeah, I never had played. In fact, I never sang until 6 years ago.
Mm.
And I sing around the house just like everybody does. But uh, my dad was, as I said, just really, really into music. And when I'd be singing, he's like, "Yeah, you should do something with your voice someday, you know." But in my family, we're so practical, like we're so Midwestern. It's like music we do. It's just right. So the fact that it turned into something I do was
Did you grow up in Colorado?
Nebraska.
Oh, Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Yes.
Have you heard of that place?
Corn fed.
I maintain that my life is still like that New Yorker poster, you know?
Oh yeah, 10th Avenue, and then the Hudson River, and the rest of the world's about this big. Yeah.
There's the ocean in Nebraska. Like, yeah, being in Nebraska, everybody, like the way I grew up, my grandparents were farmers, and this was just not a thing at all. It wasn't something you do. In fact, my dad, even listening to blues was a sin. I mean, they were Baptist. It was absolutely a sin to listen to that music, which made it so much more interesting for all of us. Like, I think there was some really, that's probably the reason we loved music so much, my dad and I, because it was like kind of forbidden to listen to that kind of music.
Wow. So that Play Nice album, I really love that Play Nice album, and I got to say, I think my favorite cut on there. Well, I have a couple, but as the one that I play the most on the radio station is "Flowers at My Feet."
Throw my head back and wonder what's been going on back at home. One more night to go. Don't have a lot to give, but I'll dig it up for the show. Words don't mean nothing. My heart has been hard to find. Flowers just might change my mind. Hey, yeah. She put the flowers in my feet. Hey, oh. She put the flowers in my feet. Got nothing to bring. Don't look me in the eye, 'cause you surely won't see a thing. Yeah, I've been drinking too much and taking the place of my good man's touch. Words don't mean nothing. My heart has been hard to find. Some flowers just might change my mind. Hey, she put the flowers in my feet. Hey, oh no, no, no. She put the flowers in my feet.
Oh, I'm so
I,
glad.
I love the groove. I love the guitar playing, and I love your vocal performance on it. It's really, really excellent, Cass.
Thank
That's
you
got a
so
backstory.
much.
That's actually a Taylor
Yes.
generated concept. Do you want to tell
Yes.
the story about the lady in the moo or should we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because one of the few songs that we wrote backwards, like I was telling you. So Taylor actually had the chorus to that song, and he's like, "Yeah, I've got this chorus, and if it moves, I think he had put in reverse too." Um, he's like, "If there's anything that you like about this," I'm like, "Oh, yes, we have to write this song." And so I took that piece and started writing it. But the story behind it was that his band was traveling in Canada, and they were in a bar, and it was the last show of their tour. They were all super tired. Um, and they walk into this bar that they're going to play in that night, or club, and they were just wiped out. I think the owner was not like really in a great mood, and they were just like, "We just got to survive one more night." That feeling when you don't think you have anything else to give.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And they got up on stage and started playing, and this lady in a muumuu came in, and she's an older lady, and she just brought them this huge vase of flowers from her garden and just put them at his feet. Like, it makes me want to cry, because it's like when you need that and somebody gives that to you, you're that tired, and humanity
That caused the
does
song to
something,
happen.
so that caused the song to happen.
Yeah.
But it also made their night amazing, and they had a great night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you need something, the universe will give it to you.
So the guitar tone on that is David Snyder's quote was, "When the cat's away, the mice will play." So I didn't make it to that session, and I left my '65 Gibson Firebird here, which is the same as the one that I bought at Clarksville Corners from Mike Aranya's father.
Oh my. I bought some things there too.
Alex, what was your second favorite song? Didn't you say there were two favorites?
Well, yeah, Tattered and Torn also, but if I had to pick one, I would say Flowers at My Feet. That's the one that I play the most, because speaking from a drummer's perspective, that the groove was really killer. It's so laid back, and it's simple but yet complicated, and I bop to it every time I hear it. So, it's
Brian Claxton on drums on that.
Brian has a PhD in drumming from the University of Northern Colorado.
Wow.
Actually, his name is Dr. Claxton, and he's such a great percussionist. Have you ever used a pie plate on top of the snare?
Yeah, that's what nowadays a lot of young guys are using, like little splash cymbals, and they're putting them on snare drums and stuff like that. Yeah, and the pie plates, and a lot of the New Orleans guys would do something like that too.
Yeah, we cut a perfect drum track, and Taylor said, "Give me another track for a snare," and I'm like, "What? What? We just, So I set it up, and I go over to see what they're doing, and he's got this 9-inch pie plate in the middle of the snare, and he's so good that he doesn't flam at all on top of the original track. And so I went out and bought a pie plate. I was in the car as soon as the session was over, off the Safeway, and the one that I got sucks. It doesn't sound anything like
You gotta
him.
be careful about which pie plate you use.
Oh man, I couldn't take it back. It had dents in it.
Yeah, like I said, it's like there's a young kid out right now. I'm just floored by all the drummers that are out there that are just, and they're young guys that are just killer. And this young guy just he doesn't even use toms. He doesn't have toms, and he does have like a couple of toms, but it's mostly snare drums and practically no cymbals. And all he does is he puts these little splash cymbals on the snares, and his name is J.D. Beck. If you look him up, he's apparently a whole thing built around him with a bunch of drummers. And you've heard of Snarky Puppy?
Yes, I love them.
Yeah, he's involved with what's his name, Spud, the drummer. Spud. He plays with Ghost Note. I don't know if you've heard of them. Ghost Note. Oh, God, they're like ridiculous, and they're all branching off from Snarky Puppy. I think the percussionist was from Snarky Puppy.
Alex, who's the Swedish guys? The three guys.
Oh, Dirty Loops.
Dirty Loops. Those guys are fantastic.
And Dan Snyder dragged me to the Gothic Theater in Denver, and I'm still recovering from that.
Live?
Henrik's, is that his name? Henrik. It's not Henrik. It's Henrik. His bass amp. He had a wall of angled bass amps, and I think I had some kind of chest cavitation thing happen to me. But his guitar, because he's got like an 8-string bass, and he's playing these mandolin chords up the neck and doing, like Danny Tone guitar licks on the bass. So, I have that saved to play for younger people. So why don't you guys learn how to play like these guys? I show them the video, and that's the end of that. It's been set.
Go to your room for the next few months and stay there and keep practicing. Right?
Yeah.
So tell us about the new Cass-Clayton record that you guys have been working on with the Moog synthesizer I heard about.
We are so excited. We're so excited. We went out to dinner the other night with Taylor. The three of us went out to a great, an Italian restaurant in Colorado. Is kind of like an oxymoron, but the guys are Italian. The Ferrari Club meets there once a month, and these guys are for real, So we had this amazing meal, and we were just high on talking about the song, and we had just finished doing these amazing guitar overdubs. The things that Taylor comes up with, he had my assistant search his case for the specific heavy thumb pick because he was thinking way in advance that he wanted to do this little part. And I was talking to our luthier that Cass and I are very close with because we have 70 guitars. And so, he said, how come that's 32 tracks? And I said, there are these little things. It's not like he's just plowing through the whole thing. There are these little touches. So there are 2 stereo Hammond C3 tracks through the Leslie, and there are 2 of the same but cabinet and DI of our Fender Rhodes, and the Moog track, and a separate Rhodes track for fills. And
what kind of Moog do you have?
But what's that?
What kind of Moog?
I don't know what it is that John has. It sounds just like John Poussette Dart's solo Moog part on Woman in My Dreams. Do you know John Poussette Dart?
I know him, and his father was a famous artist. I don't know his music that well. Yeah.
Cause I've been talking to Norbert Putnam, who produced a lot of John's stuff about it, and for Taylor, and he said, that's the sound. But it's just this starts out literally like a lullaby, and ends up like Sonny Chirac.
So you can see that that's a picture of the Moog.
All right. I got you.
That was John's Moog that he brought in.
Very nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been, we're really doing one single at a time right now, where we used to do 2 songs at a time, like I was mentioning before, because it's not a really great time to release a whole album. We've got this time and space. We're writing more songs, but not all of them will probably make it to the album. So it's kind of nice to have the time. We've always been really, really on short time schedules.
Right.
I'm also learning that my feet held to the fire in terms of just productivity.
Yeah, me too.
Official deadlines right now. Yeah, I think the mind needs a timeline.
It's interesting what you said about having a whole CD's worth of material as opposed to just having several pieces done. I don't even know if it's worth it to put out a CD anymore.
I don't either. That's
my mindset is that you put out a CD and you travel and you perform the material live, and maybe some sort of a video setting.
And set up a merch table.
Yeah, but that whole world is gone now, at least till next year,
Right.
You can't play it on the way home in your car because there is no CD player in it any longer.
Even before the whole, shutdown of the world, the single was kind of what people were doing.
Yeah, big time.
I felt a little self-indulgent doing a whole album, but we had the songs, we had stuff that was coming out that wanted to be said, knowing that you don't make money off of an album anymore, that it's really for the people who love your music, and it's for your own creative process.
So
New material for you to play live when you go play live.
Yeah.
I use this analogy all the time,
Yeah.
which I have absolutely no legitimacy to be able to talk about. But Cass and I talk about the birthing of a record, and it's usually a CD,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a trimester thing where there's, the conception and then the mixing, editing, or the editing, mixing, and then the mastering, and then the record comes out. And I suffer from a form of musical postpartum, because after that, I think I'm never going to be able to do anything better than this again. And I'm totally bummed. So now this is what I thought of this morning. When you do a CD, it's like having a litter. And right now we have an only child. And this only child
We're
is
obsessed
getting
with
so
how
spoiled.
cute she is. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It does get a little unbearable. You get a little into this one thing.
So I'm
tunnel
thinking
vision.
maybe we have to guard against that a little bit. We had a bunch of other ones to deal with, but this is just so remarkably good. And Taylor thinks so too. I love this kind of creativity. David Snyder used to call me Stockhausen all the time because microphones from the ceiling fan. And, I learned all that stuff from Larry Alexander. I'd walk in 914 and they would have a cinder block on the sustain pedal with a Fender Twin Reverb underneath it facing up and miking the sustain of the piano strings. And I would just, I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea about mics or recording or anything. It's like, what the hell is going on here, And it's like the idea of playing through the Leslie, which Taylor does a lot.
Yeah.
But just to have microphones and physical things in the room to mess around with is kind of old school stuff that we do without plugins anymore. So
Yeah. So you've got one track done for the next project, if it is going to be a CD, which it most likely will be.
Someday it will be. We're going to start releasing singles,
Oh,
just
that's a good idea.
sense to do that right now. And the people who would normally be going out live to listen to us are wanting us to do something. We get a lot of feedback from people saying, okay, well, when are you going to do your next thing? And so there's that urgency, kind of, because I want people to be still connected.
I caught something on YouTube that I think you posted it or Jeff posted it at Dazzle.
Coming up, yes. No,
Is that
or is it in something that's coming?
What's that about?
So Dazzle is just a phenomenal jazz club here. I mean, it really is, there are two phenomenal jazz clubs and Dazzle's one of them, and they've been around longer. So when everything shut down, they continued to do some live performance at the club, but and we've done that, but you're behind plexiglass with a mask. It's not easy right now. So
it's like Devo.
Uh-huh.
Oh, whip it good.
They've been really supportive of artists. And so what they've done is they've got this collaboration with a great studio called Mighty Fine Studios. So on Monday, the 21st, we'll be in Mighty Fine live for Dazzle. So Dazzle's
Is it just you and Taylor, or you and somebody else, or a whole band?
actually the whole band with Taylor and
Wow.
a guest on it. And then also Larry Thompson, who's just a phenomenal drummer, will be our guest on drums. So Larry's been on every album in Colorado.
You're all spaced like 6 feet apart. It's a big open space.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can even in that studio, you can choose to be in separate rooms, and they'll even video you in each room if you want to be.
Wow.
And the Blues Night fundraiser, this I guess Thursday coming is September 17th.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
one of our very few actual live shows. It's outdoors and distanced, and so they basically set up the tables outside, really far apart, and then people can go and grab their drink and their meal. There's some restaurants around there. There's a great gumbo place there, and
Yeah, it's like stores on either side, and coffee shops, and there's a Mexican restaurant and this gumbo place, which is where we go if we can help it. It's really hip. I was doing. Yeah, I did sound, quote unquote, because I was really on the side of the stage more doing a monitor mix. And I was actually buzzing for at least 2.5, 3 days after that gig, as was Cass. The first time playing out, it's like another gig, except there is no other gig except since January or something.
I mean, it's like a heroin addict getting a fix. Like right now when we play out, it's just,
it was so great.
Everybody's so grateful to be there. It's a whole new level of gratitude. I always feel so happy to play anytime, anywhere, but now, because you're waiting a month in between or longer, it's just, we're so excited to be playing music. We're excited to see the people who are there.
Yeah, I get it. Have you noticed, like, are less people booking your studio now because of COVID?
It's crazy busy.
Oh.
Crazy. Yeah, bands are itching.
Yeah.
And we have more time to write, as you know, so
yeah. I've done some like home studio recordings and sent them off to different people who are working on projects, and Alex has too with Richie Steele.
Yay!
Cool.
I did Glenn John's mic technique yesterday. You familiar with that, Alex?
Oh, Glenn John's
drum miking, and I did that yesterday, and I sent all those tracks to California just before we started today. Basically 4 microphone mic technique, and the drummer wore a mask the whole time.
Wow.
The song was 5 minutes long. I thought he was going to die of anoxia. When you're drumming, when you're playing keys and you're playing guitar, there's some exercise going on. But when you're kick drum, hi-hat, snare, cymbals, those guys sweat, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You don't have to tell me about the salt in my eyes.
Right.
Do you want to include some of your tunes like in the course of our conversation?
It's totally up to you.
No, it's up well, I'd like to. We don't have to do 4. We could do 2.
Sure.
I had asked you about selecting a couple of songs. What would you like to do first?
Maybe Dawes County.
Dawes County knows who I am. 3 generations on borrowed land. For years we farmed that piece of ground to which we're always bound. Used to be a pretty drive-through town. Now the streets are empty and the store shut down. 15 churches, but you can't buy a drink. Hell of a missing link. And I won't be coming home again. Won't be coming home. And I won't be coming home again. Dawes County doesn't know where I've gone or how I've grown. Still the girl on Grandma
do B-side.
B-side, and that's on Play Nice? Okay.
Yeah, it is.
If you were a record on my shelf, you know I play you night and day. Running that same song round and round till I wear the cruise away. Playing the A-side, A-side, over and over and over again. What about the B-side? Sooner or later we got to jump in. I don't know what keeps you up in the middle of the night. What's hidden in your shadows? Do you bark before you bite? Playing the A-side, A-side, over and over all night long. What about the B-side? I won't judge you right or wrong. If we're gonna be together, no need to bite your tongue. Some songs are for everyone, but that don't mean that they should go unsung. I want the B-side. Yeah, I want the B-side too. You should know I'm not the one you gotta hide your secrets from. I could dig them out of you. Don't you know I could love that too? And while we're on the subject, wouldn't you like to know what's hidden in between the lines that I'm too afraid to show? Playing the A-side, A-side, over and over and over again. What about the B-side? Oh, we got to jump in.
I wanted to thank you guys so much for joining us. It was really wonderful.
Thank you so much. We love your show, and it's just an honor to be on it and talk with you again.
Well, maybe we could do this again and we can drag Taylor in.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Great idea. You guys
You have a couple of tunes down. You know, if you want to let us play one, we'll do this on the show one night.
perfect.
Great.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
All
that'd
right,
be great.
well, thank you guys. Stay well. We'll talk soon.
Okay, we'll see
Okay,
you.
take care.
All right, guys. Take care.